It is 9:57 a.m. on this Monday, the 6th of October, 2025, and this is episode 1183 of Bitcoin, and it's all the news that you can use about Bitcoin and more. We've got record inflows. Yes, I know we're all flying high on 125K. Don't break your arm patting yourself on the back here, because we got all kinds of other stuff going on. Vietnam is limiting the amount of, God, I hate saying the word, crypto exchanges. We'll see how much that stabs them in their own eye. Standard Chartered, some of their analysts have put out some rather disturbing potential news for emerging markets, third world countries. Hell, this probably even is going to affect the EU, but they're talking about how much outflows of money could be going to United States-backed stablecoins. And then Russia. We're going to have a couple of things on Russia. The central bank is preparing an audit on Bitcoin, so we'll see where that one goes. But then there is the first Ruble-backed stablecoin, and it's not in Russia. It's in Kyrgyzstan. But apparently it's doing very, very well, even though it's sanctioned. I don't even know how the hell that works, but we'll get into that one. And then we're going to go back and talk about the UK one more time when it comes to this 61,000 Bitcoin that was seized. Then we'll have a story about a lady who, her fight against financial repression. And she's like, I don't know, she could actually become a poster child for what happens when you get your bank account shut down for no apparent fault of your own. And then finally, today, we're going to talk about AI and the AI high performance compute Bitcoin miners. The companies, they're rallying. Well, we'll see how long that lasts. In my estimation, Bitcoin mining and AI are going to coexist for a very, very, very long time. A very long time. AI, even if you hate it, even if you think it's the downfall of all that is good and holy for humanity, it's not going away. Which means that if you don't want it to be the downfall of all that is good and holy in humanity, then you might want to figure out how to take these tools and use them for good. But first, crypto funds smash records with $6 billion inflows amid shutdown concerns. So hell in parts, Cointelegraph, we're going to talk about the effect of the shutdown and what it seems to be doing to, well, crypto, for lack of a better term. Cryptocurrency investment products recorded their highest ever inflows last week. Let me say that again. Cryptocurrency investment products recorded their highest ever inflows last week as the U.S. government shutdown fueled a rally in spot crypto markets. Global crypto exchange traded products recorded $5.95 billion in inflows in the week ending Friday, and it is indeed the largest inflows ever seen, according to CoinShares. Quote, "We believe this was due to a delayed response to the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, their interest rate cut, compounded by very weak employment data and concerns over U.S. government stability following the shutdown," CoinShares head of research James Butterfill said. The record inflows came amid an overall bullish trend in crypto markets, which led Bitcoin to registering a new historic high above $125,000 on Saturday. With inflows reaching $5.9 billion, crypto ETPs surpassed the previous $4.4 billion record, which was from mid-July, by 35%. That's one hell of an increase. Unlike the previous record inflows, which were almost equally distributed between Bitcoin and Ether, the latest gains were heavily dominated by Bitcoin, with Bitcoin funds attracting a record-breaking $3.6 billion. Quote, despite prices, not prizes, despite prices closing in on all-time highs during the week, investors did not choose to buy short-term investment products. Okay, Ether ETP saw inflows totaling 1.5 billion, pushing year-to-date inflows to another record of $13.7 billion, which was close to the triple of that last year, Butterfield said. And then they talk about Solana, and I shouldn't have even said anything about Ether, but in line with the new record for inflows, total assets under management in crypto funds surged past $250 billion for the first time, reaching a new high of $254.4 billion. $250 billion. Just let that kind of sink in there. Crypto ETP's historic inflow records came amid the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission shutting down operations last week, sparking concerns over potential delays of highly anticipated exchange-traded fund approvals this October. According to the Crypto in America's Eleanor Terrett, the SEC can still act on fraud and market emergencies, but the shutdown is widely expected to introduce routine work delays. It's like a rain delay, said Bloomberg senior ETF analyst Eric Balchunas. A rain delay. Despite the anticipated slowdown, Grayscale Investments, the second largest U.S. crypto ETF provider after BlackRock, debuted the first U.S. listed spot crypto ETPs, enabling staking today, Monday. The new staking-focused products, which is Grayscale Ethereum Mini Trust and Grayscale Ethereum Trust, both ETFs, by the way, now allow investors to receive additional staking rewards in addition to gains on the fund's market performance. So I don't necessarily understand what Grayscale is doing here, other than dabbling in shitcoinery, which is obvious, but what's new? It's Grayscale. They've always done this. It seems to me that the minute that you buy an Ethereum Mini or an Ethereum Trust ETF from Grayscale, it's automatically staked. I think, and I don't know this, I'm not sure if you have a choice to say, well, no, I just want the fund. I just want the fund performance. Don't stake it. Just give me the shares and do that. But I have a very sneaky suspicion that if you buy Grayscale Ethereum Mini or the Grayscale Ethereum Trust, you don't have a choice. Now, if I'm wrong and somebody out there knows, like in detail about this, please, give me a boostagram or, contact me on Nostr, or hell, if you want to, you can contact me on Twitter. It's David Bennett NB, as in David Bennett NunyaBidness on Twitter, and let me know what the hell's going on with that in detail. Meanwhile, in Southeast Asia, Vietnam caps crypto pilot at only 5 licensed exchanges. Vismaya V from decrypt.co says it. Vietnam is planning to limit its crypto exchange pilot program to 5 licensed operators only, pointing to a cautious regulatory approach despite the country's status as a global crypto adoption leader. The framework would allow for only 5 licensed exchanges to operate during the pilot as the Ministry of Finance develops detailed regulations for taxation, compliance, and operational standards, Deputy Finance Minister Win Duc Chi said at a government presser on Monday, according to VN Economy Report, a local media publication. Chi revealed the Ministry of Finance has not yet received formal proposals from businesses to participate in the pilot, though several companies are preparing technical systems and conducting preliminary discussions with ministry officials, according to a Vietnam Plus report. The announcement comes less than a month after the government issued a resolution last month to authorize the pilot implementation of a crypto asset market in the country of Vietnam, or Vietnam, however you want to pronounce that. Under the framework, The ministry would finalize licensing procedures through coordination with the Ministry of Public Security and the State Bank of Vietnam, among other agencies, according to Chi. The Ministry of Finance is establishing regulations covering taxation, accounting policies, and operational frameworks, with Chi expressing hope to license at least one enterprise before 2026, though he cautioned the timeline depends on business readiness. Vitaly Shurtkin, CPO at B2B in Pay, told Decrypt that, quote, the clear entry bar is so high that most potential applicants can't clear it, end quote. Shurtkin said the 5 license cap turns the initiative from a sandbox into a closed compound, favoring large financial groups over fintech innovators, and that Vietnam must lower the barriers and be much more open if it hopes to attract crypto liquidity onshore. Quote, otherwise, liquidity and innovation will stay offshore, and the country's pilot will remain stuck in an experiment. The move comes as Vietnam ranks among the top 3 countries globally for crypto adoption, according to Chainalysis 2025 Global Adoption Index, with APAC regional transaction volume growing from $1.4 trillion to $2.36 trillion. Ew, that's a lot of money for just that region. But Lionel Uruk, senior advisor to NAV Markets and managing partner at Empire Legal, told Decrypt that, quote, the absence of early applicants doesn't suggest a lack of interest, but rather hesitation amid regulatory uncertainty and stringent readiness requirements. Capping the pilot at 5 enterprises is understandable as a risk management measure, but it may limit competition and slow knowledge transfer. Now, the pilot program operates under the Digital Technology Industry Law passed by Vietnam's National Assembly in June, with overwhelming support, 441 votes out of 445 lawmakers. Wow, that's all but 4. All but 4 wanted it, and they've kneecapped themselves coming right out of the gate. Good job, Vietnam. This legislation takes effect next January and makes Vietnam one of the first countries to comprehensively regulate digital assets through dedicated legislation. Yeah, well, you regulate yourself right into the ground by blowing off both your kneecaps with the largest 12-gauge shotgun you can find, because that's exactly what's happening here. It seems odd that such overwhelming political support at the federal level of Vietnam has resulted in a mind-blowing, mind-numbing incapacity for any kind of vision whatsoever. Yes, it's mostly shitcoinery, because the minute that you just say crypto, I get it. However, capping this shit at 5 companies to be able to be registered exchanges in the pilot program, and then setting the bar so high that they've only got 1 potential applicant right now. That's the way that I'm reading it. Your ability to get into this pilot program is barred tooth and nail right from the get-go. So chances of them filling all 5 slots, unless they come back and say, you know what, maybe, just maybe, we were a little harsh. Maybe we should relax our stance on this pilot program so that we can actually fill all 5 slots, because it's bad enough that they only want 5 people in there. And I guess, homeboy's saying that, hey, risk management, dude. Yeah, okay, I get it. But if you can't even fill the 5 slots that you have available, that's not good. That's not good for you. So just be aware and understand that Vietnam is being kind of stupid. And if it makes your brain feel scuzzy and dirty and maybe even a little bit smelly after listening to what Vietnam is doing, you might want to go over to SoapMiner.com and get yourself some brain scrub. SoapMiner at SoapMiner.com has cedarwood tallow soap, pine tar tallow soap, goat's milk tallow soap, lemongrass tallow soap. Man, he's got so many flavors. It's just it's this thing is awesome. And you can buy it all in Bitcoin because this is the Circle P. And if you're not selling your goods and services to other plebs for Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. And guess what? SoapMiner has new products online. They have finally made it to his store. He's got body balm, tallow body balm, 4 ounces. You can get that for $25 worth of Bitcoin. You can get cedarwood is a scent of his tallow body balm. The other one is unscented. And then he's got tallow body balm in lavender flavor. Well, scent. It's not a flavor. You don't eat it. You slather it all over your body. And he's also got deodorant. So if you are stinky and smelly, he's got a couple of different kinds. He has an unscented one. He's got a lavender one. And he has a cedarwood one. But don't forget, SoapMiner also has lip balm. He's got one in peppermint, and he's got one that is unscented. So if you don't know much about SoapMiner, it's all 100% beef tallow soap, and all of his products are made this way. Minimal ingredients, like his base soap that he works with, which you can actually get. It's called Rough Cuts Tallow. It's the first bar of soap that I used from SoapMiner. It has 3 ingredients. It's got lye. It's got 100% grass-fed tallow from beef, right? You know, like tallow is beef fat, and distilled water. That's it. That's soap. If you never knew what soap was when your grandparents and great-grandparents were making it themselves, and many of them were, well, that's the way it was made. So go to SoapMiner.com, use Bitcoin and in the coupon code for 10% off of your entire purchase. SoapMiner.com, get yourself clean, get away clean with SoapMiner brand soaps. Russia. Oh, the Ruskies are coming over the hill. They're going to kill us all. No, probably not. Although Europeans probably have something to worry about if they continuously piss off their neighbor. I'm just saying, it looks to me that the European Union, the entire economic bloc, is done for. They don't have any more money. They're screwed. Economically, the entire EU bloc is screwed, right? So what do you do when you run out of money or your circumstances are so dire that you've run out of money and you can't print any money because you're not the world reserve currency? The euro is not the world reserve currency. Only the United States dollar has that distinction, so we can print ad infinitum, but the European Union can't. So what do? You go to war. They've been hammering this drum for freaking ever. And then out of nowhere, even though I know I'm going to switch over to talking about stablecoin, but out of nowhere, out of freaking nowhere, there is a stablecoin coming out of Kyrgyzstan. So, Helen Parch from Cointelegraph. Sanctioned A7A5 becomes largest non-US dollar stablecoin according to, well, data. A7A5 is the name of the Russian ruble-backed stablecoin issued in Kyrgyzstan, and it has just now become the world's biggest non-US dollar stablecoin despite facing multiple sanctions. A7A5's market capitalization stood at almost $500 million on Monday, which is about 43% of the total $1.2 billion market cap of all non-US stablecoins, according to data from CoinMarketCap and DeFi Llama. Quote, "We have already proven that a national digital currency can be not only an alternative to the dollar, but also a driver of global change," A7A5 wrote on its Telegram channel on Saturday. The statement came as the project drew attention at Token 2049, a major crypto industry event in Singapore, where its presence raised questions about sanctions compliance and the project's growing international exposure. The A7A5 stablecoin was launched in February as a token backed by a diversified portfolio of fiat deposits held in reliable banks within the Kyrgyzstan network, end quote. Pegged 1-to-1 to Russia's national fiat currency, the ruble, A7A5 promised to distribute a daily passive income equal to half of the interest on deposits. Oh, for God's sakes, the grift. Well, I guess if humans are in charge, they will figure out a way to screw somebody out of their money by telling them, well, lies and giving them opium to smoke. But the token was initially issued on two blockchain networks, Ethereum and Tron. Soon after its debut, blockchain analyst links A7A5 to Grinix, a crypto exchange widely seen as the successor to the sanctioned Russian Garantex exchange. In mid-August, the U.S. Treasury announced sanctions against Garantex and related entities, highlighting Moldovan oligarch Ilyan Shor as the owner of A7A5's issuer, the sanctioned Russian bank. Oh, there's no way I can pronounce this. Promsvyazbank, PSB? SVYAZ is unpronounceable to me. Promsvyazbank, PSB. Anyway, the United Kingdom also promptly imposed sanctions on several banks inside Kyrgyzstan, reporting that Russia used A7A5 to bypass Western financial restrictions. Despite broad sanctions, A7A5's market value has held steady between $120 million and $140 million. On September the 25th, A7A5's market cap surged by $350 million, which is a 250% jump in one day, making it the largest non-US dollar stablecoin by value, ahead of Circle's euro-pegged EURC coin, which stood at $252 million at the time of writing. The sharp rise in A7A5's market cap came just days before the project's appearance at Token 2049, where it hosted a booth and executive Oleg Ozhenko took the stage. A7A5's presence at the conference sparked controversy within the crypto community, with many calling for compliance and closing regulatory loopholes at industry events. I thought we were supposed to be free and open. I guess not. Well, some investigators have linked A7A5's growth to ties with China. Ooh, China. Quote, trade with China has emerged as the dominant focus of A7A5's activities to date, nonprofit organization Center for Information Resilience said in a report on Monday. The Center for Information Resilience reported that 78% of A7A5 transactions went through Chinese jurisdictions, according to figures shared by the company in August of 2025, adding that the stablecoin has also been heavily expanding into Africa, with offices in both Nigeria and Zimbabwe. Quote, further research will be needed to comprehensively understand how funding flows through the organization's network, the potential role of financial institutions in enabling its operations, and any linkages to Russian political interference schemes, the CIR added. Cointelegraph approached A7A5 for comment regarding the stablecoin's growth, but of course did not receive a response by publication. Let's go back up here for a second. I want to see this thing. There's two things that are obviously a problem for me right here. Is this notion of having a stablecoin produce a yield? Yeah, I know, I get it. Back in the day when banks used to be kind of cool in the United States, you could deposit US dollars into your into your savings account and get a pretty decent yield. But that was, dude, we're talking the 70s. We're talking the 70s into like the early 80s, and then shit just went tits up. It just started getting messy, and you're good to get like 1%, yield on your bank accounts. And the whole thing with yield was, back in the day, we were told, being lied to straight to our face, we were told that when we deposit money into a bank, that bank then uses that money, our deposits, to make loans to other people. And the yield generated came from the interest or the coupon that they attached to those loans. Well, then it turns out that none of that shit was true. And I guess once the cat was out of the bag, they just decided to say, hey, screw it. Screw you. We're going to make loans. We're going to do 7% on those loans. And we're not using your money anyway because we're just printing it out of thin air. Because if you did not know, this is how it actually works. So we're just going to give you, 0.95% on your Wells Fargo savings account. Well, here we come with the stable coins. And these guys are saying that it's, hey, we're going to give you half of the interest that it earns. Where does the yield come from? That's always the question. You always ask that. The second somebody says earn interest on your whatever it is, your first job is to ask, where does that yield come from? And if you can't answer that question, the yield is coming from you. Right? So if you're getting it for free on the internet, you're not the customer, you're the product. It's the same deal. It's the exact same thing. So this is my first issue here with this particular token, is that they're already talking about interest earned on holding this thing. The second is, what they were saying about all the people at this Token 2049 conference going, oh my God, they shit the bed and they wet their panties because Russia, and it's not even Russia, by the way, it's Kyrgyzstan. But the fact that there is a Russian ruble based stablecoin is kind of a big deal because it's sitting right next to Europe. And Europe wants to go to war with Russia because it's the only way they're going to survive because their economy is in shambles. It's in shambles. And every country does this, and the United States is no exception. Hey, we ran out of money. Hey, I know, we'll go to war. We'll figure it out. We'll just go to war, and all of a sudden we'll crank all the machines on and everything will be just fine. And no, you're just kicking the can down the road there. But this Russian-backed stablecoin is sitting right there. In Eastern Europe, you never know. They may actually want to hold some of this stuff as well as something like Tether or Circle or something that's backed by the US dollar. Either way, Europe as a whole is kind of in danger, both from the West and from their eastern flank, of having money, whatever money is left in the European bloc, just completely vacuumed away, right? Completely freaking vacuumed away from them, because that could happen. That very well could happen. So just understand, Europe's not in a good place right now. The European Union is just not in a good place. Let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities. Energy getting a little bit of relief this morning. Brent North Sea is up 1.19% to $65.30. West Texas Intermediate is up a point to 61.52. Natural gas is not going down. It's in the green, 2.33% to the upside to $3.40 per thousand cubic feet. And gasoline is up almost 2 points to $1.89 a gallon. Murban crude, everybody's favorite light sweet crude, is up 1.87% to $66.92. Gold and all of its brethren are doing very well this morning. Palladium knocking it out of the park, 4.33% to the upside. Gold, damn near 2 full points. We're looking straight in the eyes of another all-time high for shiny metal rocks, $3,980.05. Platinum is up a point, and silver is up 0.89% to $48.39 an ounce. Holy crap. And ag is fully mixed today. It looks like the biggest loser is going to be coffee, 2.5% to the downside. Biggest winner is chocolate, 1.33% to the upside. Meanwhile, live cattle is up a point. Lean hogs up a third. Feeder cattle up 1.6%. Woo! Paying a lot to feed. You're paying a lot to get the right to feed those cows. These prices are the highest cattle prices. Beef prices, I saw like there's an index. Beef prices, from what I saw yesterday, crossed another all-time high sometime during the weekend or at end close of business commodities on Friday, I guess. I'm not exactly sure how the beef price index works, but according to what I saw yesterday, beef now stands at yet another all-time high. This is what you get from $7 corn. See, with commodity producers on corn, we're getting $7 a bushel on their corn, which is what? Used to finish grain-fed cattle in confined animal feeding operations. The guys at confined animal feeding operations and other ranchers were just like, I can't afford the grain bill at $7 a bushel on corn. Can't do it. So they basically they did worse than decimate their herds. They sent a whole bunch of cows off to slaughter, and now we are down to record lows on the United States cattle herd. I mean, we haven't seen this. I think I've heard two stories. One, cattle herds haven't been this low in the number of head ever. I've also heard this low in decades. Either way, we're screwed. But now, now you know what corn's going for now a bushel? $3 a bushel. Corn farmers are getting freaking slammed. They're getting hosed. But now you can grain finish cattle at the CAFO. Except what's going on? There's no cattle at the CAFO. Well, there is cattle at the CAFO. You drive by one, I guarantee you see thousands of head of cattle, but it's not like it was, right? So even though cattle ranchers and producers and they can afford to grain finish cattle, there's no cattle to finish, or at least not in the numbers that there was. So now the guys that were producing the grain at $7, selling it all, are producing the same grain for $3 a bushel and can't get rid of it, which will probably may push the prices down even further if we can't offload this shit to other countries. So just watch meat prices over the next few months and see what you see about it. All right, $125,680 a coin is I guess a new all-time high for Bitcoin, because we stand at a $2.5 trillion market cap. You can get 31.7 ounces of shiny metal rocks with your one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,930,810 and one half of. And through all of it, average fees per block are low, really low, 0.02 BTC taken in fees on a per block basis. There are 30 blocks carrying a meager 55,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 3 sats per VByte. Low priorities get you in at the same. 1.04 zettahashes per second. Again, we are still above the zettahash threshold. 1.04 zettahashes per second is the hash rate of the Bitcoin network. So we've got plenty of digital security securing our Bitcoin. From Ankh Morpok, 500 sats. He says, keep doing what you're doing. And that was from Authoritarian Totality, Friday's episode of Bitcoin. And also got Tulips with 1,000 says, Tulips, I keep an eye on the auction market of a few countries I have access to. And let me tell you, Rolex watches are bid like crazy. They are highly liquid and a good way to transport money around. For those who are not familiar with Bitcoin, which is 96% of the world is dangerous, especially in the UK lately. I still do not know how to survive the digital shit they are throwing at everybody everywhere. Short of violence, I see no solution but to fly away and let those places just be tulips and go to zero. So that answers my question about Rolex watches. Hey, why not? Shit, prisoners bid on, they trade cigarettes in prison as a currency. Cans of sardines, probably cans of tuna. If it comes in a can and it can be saved and not spoil, it's probably used as money in prisons. But here, we're using Rolex watches. Now, but here's my question about that though. They're so easy to steal. If you can't get caught out by yourself at night and somebody knows you're wearing $250,000 on your wrist, they want it, and you're by yourself, unless you got a gun and are willing to like shoot a couple of people, then they're going to take it. And if they've got more than 6 or 7 people on your ass, you probably aren't going to be able to clear that field with your firearm. So they're going to take that shit. So I think that's the one question that I'm always going to have remaining is that, sure, yes, it makes sense to use a Rolex as being able to have, portable wealth, as it were. But unlike diamonds, which you can swallow and shit out on the other end of your destination, a Rolex kind of flashes wealth the minute somebody sees it. So if it was me, I would not do that. But I also don't want to eat a bunch of rocks and pick through human fecal matter at the end of it, because that just sounds dehumanizing. Paul Cernine with 500 says, thanks for another worthwhile episode, bringing us all the news we can use, including the Circle P. When it comes to a remedy for decoupling from the broken system and healing, there's currently nothing better than Bitcoin, in my humble opinion. But we'll see where this is all going. I certainly hope to be able to invite you for a beer someday and hear your take on this topic. Until then, I'll always see you, or more precisely, listen to you on the other side. Thank you. I appreciate that. Joe Nakamoto says, good morning. Good morning. Where and how do you keep up with Bitcoin news nowadays? Now, Joe didn't actually give me any Satoshis, but Reed wrote back to him, which is why I'm seeing this in my fountain.fm feed. And he says, Nostr and a few podcasts, at Rabbit Hole Recap, Bitcoin and then one other one, and I'm not sure because it kind of cuts off here. But thank you, sir, with 500 sat says, make tar and feathers great again. Yes, please, and thank you, sir. No, thank you. Wartime with 133 says, cheers. BTC on board with 100. Damn it, gives me a bunch of emojis I can't read. Pies with 121 says, thank you, sir. No, thank you. God's Death with 237 says, thank you, sir. No, thank you. And that is the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. Let's do Russia, part 2. Russia. Central bank prepares national audit on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. This is out of atlas21.com. The Russian central bank is preparing to carry out an extensive inspection of the country's cryptocurrency market, involving both businesses and private individuals. Oh boy, the initiative, officially announced by the Monetary Authority, will begin within the first 2 months of 2026 and represents an attempt to map Russia's crypto ecosystem. Probably right before they try to steal it all from law-abiding citizens. Oh well. According to the Russian newspaper Izvestia, the Bank of Russia will launch a detailed investigation to examine cryptocurrency investments and lending volumes to companies operating in the digital sector. The monetary institution also plans to analyze individual investments in digital financial products whose returns are linked to the price of digital assets. This likely includes cryptocurrency derivatives and similar financial instruments, many of which were introduced this year on the Moscow Exchange and other Russian trading platforms. The Russian central bank justifies this audit by citing the need to monitor the, quote, risks and opportunities that the digital asset sector poses not only on global markets, but specifically to the national economy. Bank officials stated that the survey's goal is to, quote, assess the volume of cryptocurrency investments made by regulated entities, including for risk hedging purposes, end quote. I call bullshit. But in parallel with the general investigation, the central bank has ordered the Moscow Exchange and commercial banks offering crypto derivatives to provide monthly reports on transactions and trading volumes. The decision to conduct this audit comes amid growing tensions between the central bank and the Russian Ministry of Finance over digital asset policy. While the ministry is pushing to regulate and tax the industry, bringing it out of the gray zone, and that's in quotes, the bank favors measures that would keep cryptocurrencies at the fringes of Russia's economic system. Kirill Karpov, senior lecturer in the Department of Financial Law at the Moscow State University of Law, commented, quote, "The bank and the government will use the information from the survey to help form regulatory policy. They will look to legalize the market to generate tax revenue," end quote. Currently, Russian legislation legally recognizes only officially registered Bitcoin miners and participants in the central bank's sandbox project. This sandbox allows Russian companies to use cryptocurrencies as a means of payment in cross-border trade transactions. Beyond the sandbox, several companies are believed to be conducting direct commercial exchanges with international partners using cryptocurrencies. So make no mistake, Russia is just as bad as any other federal government on the face of the planet. They want to know what their citizenry owns, and they want to cut because it's just like the mob. They can't figure out a way to do anything constructive on their own that people will pay them money for, so they instead do what? Steal it. Sure, why not? Let's let them too, by the way, because humans are good at basically just being able to roll over and take it on the chin. So what's next for the UK's $7 billion in seized Bitcoin? Probably theft. Simon Chandler from Decrypt will tell me whether I'm right or wrong. Trade associations representing the British crypto industry have mixed views on whether the UK government should use $7 billion in seized Bitcoin as the basis of a Bitcoin strategic reserve. The UK government is reportedly aiming to keep most of the 61,000 BTC that it seized back in 2018, with civil recovery proceedings currently determining how much should be returned to victims of a large-scale Chinese investment fraud. Again, if you did not listen to me report on this already, the UK government seized these coins back in 2018, 61,000 of them. They are almost guaranteed to only give back the fiat value of those coins at the 2018 value. All right, I had a rant about this, and I may engage in one again because it pisses me off. If somebody steals my car, because these coins were stolen, these are stolen Bitcoin, right? They were I think it was like 250,000 people were defrauded in total out of 61,000 Bitcoin. That's the property, not the value of the property, but the actual property itself. And if somebody steals my car and the police recover it, they don't auction the car and then give me the money for the car. They actually give me the car back. Now, that's in the United States. And I'm honestly surprised that it's still that way. But no, they want me to come get the car. They want me to come to the impound lot. They want me to put my keys in the ignition, and they want me to get my car out of their hair. They have no intention of engaging in selling my car and then giving me a check for the money, which would not be as valuable as having a working automobile itself, unless it was a brand new car like that day. Then maybe, possibly, but probably not. In this case, they're like, no, we don't want to give you the actual Bitcoin back. No, we're going to give you the fiat value of that coinage in 2018 terms. Go look up what the price of Bitcoin was in 2018. It is nowhere close to where we are today. This is theft by the United Kingdom government, plain and simple, against citizenry of the UK. There's no other way to slice that bitch. It is straight up your government. If you're listening to me and you're in the UK and these are some of your coins, you're getting ripped off by your own government. And we will do exactly what? Nothing. The legal question of how much victims should be compensated comes at a time when the UK government is looking for ways to fill a gigantic hole in their public finances, which is worth up to $67 billion. However, some crypto industry representatives are skeptical that the government will hold the frozen Bitcoin for the long term, assuming that civil proceedings determine its right to retain most of the seizure. Thieves, again, thievery. Speaking to Decrypt, British Blockchain Association President Professor Nassim Nakivi, MBE, said that the UK's approach to criminal assets is ultimately set by the Proceeds of Crime Act, or POCA, meaning that the objective of British policy in this area is the recovery of criminal proceeds and not long-term investment holdings. Quote, recent ministerial answers have reaffirmed that seized assets are managed and realized under POCA, and that the UK's official reserves policy does not contemplate adding Bitcoin. There are no plans to change this or to consider Bitcoin as a reserve asset, he explained. Well, not only does UK law point away from the long-term holding of the frozen BTC, Nakvi suggests that such holding would also contradict current UK fiscal policy. He goes on to say, quote, from a public finance perspective, taking on price volatility risk with confiscated assets would run counter to established UK Treasury and Bank of England reserve management principles and could set a precedent that blurs the line between asset recovery and investment policy. Okay, I got to pause here again because this sentence, this last part of this sentence, it would run counter to established UK Treasury and the Bank of England reserve management principles. It could set a precedent that blurs the line between asset recovery, recovering assets that were stolen from British citizens, and investment policy. The fact that those two phrases, those two ideas, asset recovery and investment policy, are so close together in this sentence should make the hackles on your neck stand up. Continuing, these views aren't shared by the British crypto industry as a whole, however, with a spokesperson for Crypto UK, which counts the likes of Gemini, OKX, Input Out, Bitwise, Socios.com, and Nexo as members, arguing that plans to immediately sell the frozen Bitcoin would run contrary to the UK government's recent moves to boost the industry. They said, quote, we would urge the government to take a long-term view on the holding of crypto and deeply consider what message offloading these digital assets would send to UK's very own crypto industry. The Crypto UK spokesperson also highlighted the fact that other jurisdictions are taking steps toward maintaining strategic cryptocurrency reserves, as are a growing number of publicly listed companies like, MicroStrategy. Despite highlighting legal arguments that could or will prevent the UK government from holding on to the 61,000 BTC for the longer term, Professor Nakvi acknowledged that the establishment of a British Bitcoin reserve would be a powerful signal to the industry. Quote, it would be symbolically potent, but policy inconsistent in this context, he said. Quote, a government wallet visibly hodling could be read by markets as a vote of confidence and might be welcomed by some industry voices, end quote. But because long-term holding would conflict with POCA's victim-focused recovery aims, and with recent affirmations that the UK government is not planning a crypto reserve, Nakvi proposed a more practical, realistic option. He explained, quote, if courts order forfeiture, the government could choose a phased and transparent disposal, like auction windows, to reduce market impact consistent with international practice while keeping within POCA's purpose, end quote. And in such a context, he affirmed that the UK should concentrate on providing leadership to the British crypto industry by, quote, finalizing high-quality, evidence-based crypto regimes and ensuring consistent enforcement. Selling off the frozen Bitcoin as quickly as realistically possible may carry the risks of repeating one of the most controversial fiscal acts in recent British history, namely the sale of 401 tons of gold, which was more than half of all British reserves of gold between the years 1999 and 2002. Those gold sales raised $3.5 billion for the UK Treasury, yet they occurred at a time when the average gold price was $275 an ounce, with the price of the precious metal having risen over the years to its current level of $3,850 an ounce. However, NACV and the British Blockchain Association do advocate for the UK government to consider studying the feasibility of Bitcoin and crypto reserves, while even undertaking a pilot allocation between 0.1% and 0.5% of total assets. Quote, from the BBA's perspective, the UK should not hold confiscated BTC as a de facto reserve, but it should explore through research, pilots, and international dialogue whether Bitcoin could play a measured strategic role in the UK's future reserve policy, he said. Now, that's the end of the article, but it is not the end of how pissed off this entire article gets me. None of these people are saying what is out there in the open. This is not your property. It is not your property. You know where this BTC came from. It didn't just magically appear on your fucking doorstep like some baby in a goddamn milk crate and out front on the steps of a orphanage at late at night with rainstorms and shit going off. No, you know exactly where the Bitcoin came from. You know that it is not your Bitcoin, and you are going to get away with absolute frickin' murder if you're able to sell some of that Bitcoin at 2018 prices to be able to make the people that you stole the coin from. They got stolen from twice. You're going to make them quote unquote whole with fiat money back in 2018 prices of Bitcoin. And then you're going to do what? Given the language of this article, they're going to sell it. They're going to do the same boneheaded maneuver that Germany did. They're going to repeat their own boneheaded maneuver of selling off their gold at $250 an ounce when it's now $3,850. None of these people need to be in charge of any country's money. It is becoming evident that none of these people know what they're doing. Or that's the non-tinfoil hat version. If I put on my tinfoil hat, my nice crispy tinfoil hat that looks very much like, I don't know, a sailor's cap, then I could say this: they do know what they're doing, and they're doing this shit on purpose. If they were to release the 61,000 Bitcoin back into the hands of the UK citizenry that they took it from, then they would have a bunch of wealth out there in the wind. And it would probably, it would stay in the UK for at least a little bit. At least a little bit. But no. No. And if any of these coins are from international citizens, like from other countries, how the hell do you rectify that shit? You're just going to steal an American's property and auction it off, and then what? See, this is state level or State Department level shit right here between nations. So if any of those coins are not the property originally of British citizenry, you've got an international issue on your hands. So I don't think that this is going to turn out good for these coins. It is certainly, no matter what happens, going to turn out good for the people that lost those coins. They've had their property stolen twice, once by a scammer and once by bigger scammers, the United Kingdom government. Open Dialogue Foundation. Bitcoin in fight against financial repression. This is from Connor Chepanek out of Bitcoin News. Now, be aware, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this woman's name. I will try, but it's not going to be pretty. When banks shut her out, Lidmila Kozlovska kept going anyway. She grew up in Sevastopol, Crimea. As a teenager, her family faced political persecution. Strangers showed up to help. When she asked why, the answer stuck for life. Quote, because your family was doing a lot of good things and other people asked us to come, end quote. That moment set her on a path to start the Open Dialogue Foundation and defend people crushed by bad governments, of which we just talked about one. Years later, after work on Ukraine's Orange Revolution and a PhD moved to Poland, she founded the organization and went to work across Ukraine, Central Asia, Russia, Moldova, Belarus, and the European Union. The idea was simple. You do not have peace at home if your neighbors are at war. Then came the hit. She calls it transnational financial repression. Authoritarian regimes use international agreements, AML, and counterterrorism rules, travel databases, and cyber laws to flag people as threats and cut them off from their money. In 2018, she lived it. Quote, even with all my connections in European parliaments, I could not protect my financial data, she said. They weaponized anti-money laundering and counterterrorism regulations to label me as a security threat with no legal grounds, just because of my human rights work, end quote. The result was ugly. Quote, my family, my organization, company, donors, partners, even our cleaning lady, everyone around us was financially excluded from Western institutions. Everything stops when a bank pulls the plug. Salaries, rent, legal help, humanitarian aid. So, she reached for the only tool still within reach. Quote, I didn't have access to other tools. What you have in your hands is Bitcoin, peer-to-peer, end quote. That was the entry point. No exchange account, no gate to beg at, just direct settlement and money that you can hold yourself. Bitcoin in self-custody meant she could still move aid to political prisoners, refugees, and families on the run. It meant donors could still help without waiting for a compliance department in another country to feel brave that week. Back then, it was easier to find local traders in Europe. Today, she argues, EU rules treat much of Bitcoin in self-custody as suspicious when you touch regulated institutions. Belgium even passed a right to a bank account, but global banks still obey the FATF first, the FATF. If a Belgian bank wants to keep its worldwide licenses, it follows Washington's standard. That is why a lot of her advocacy now points to the United States. Yeah, we probably need more help than most third world countries at this point. And I'm talking about humanitarian aid insofar as our rights are being completely demolished right in front of us. The UK, gone. The EU, gone. United States and Canada, damn near, well, Canada's gone. United States is the last place this exists, which is probably why she's focusing her shit here. And in fact, why the U.S. matters is next up. Quote, the U.S. is a key jurisdiction which sets standards on financial regulation and privacy, travel data privacy, communications data, and cybersecurity. She said, label a privacy tool as criminal and you kill investment. Kill investment and you lose the freedom tech that keeps people alive when regimes come knocking. Her group helped launch the Building True Change Coalition to explain exactly how Bitcoin supports human rights and fast humanitarian aid. They push back on rules that punish donors who want to help. They teach the difference between targeting or targeted policing and surveillance that treats every citizen like a suspect. She is blunt about the stakes. Quote, with the spread of technology right now, if we do not build privacy protecting tools, there will be nothing to discuss in 5 years. End quote. A lot of citizens in safe countries assume that this will never touch them. Kozlovska shakes her head. There are quiet tools that never make the news. She mentions Interpol purple notices and cross-border data requests that can be abused to hoover up your travel, communications, and financial history. Quote, your business can be destroyed by a simple request you will never know about. How many startups and prominent people in Western countries were destroyed by third country competitors and they were not aware how it was possible? End quote. That is not an activist problem. That is a national security problem, and it is one reason she keeps repeating the same basic advice. Learn privacy, use privacy. Have the fire escape before the fire. Kozlovska sees a split future. Centralized AI can become a dragnet. Open tools can become a shield. She is not romantic about it. She is, well, recruiting. Quote, AI can be used against us, but it can also be used by us to protect us. If we build a coalition in the next 5 years, we can change reality. We can say, oh, it's dangerous, or we can build an army of our tech developers who will be on the side of privacy and who will protect us, who will help us build our secure digital space with the most advanced technology, end quote. That coalition is technical and political. Developers, donors, victims willing to testify, lawyers who can teach law enforcement on how to spot financial repression instead of becoming part of it. And yes, regulators who are willing to hear real stories instead of just side decks. Quote, institutions are people, she said. You have to spend time to educate them. They also work on practical innovations that get lost in policy talk. One example she raised was bionic hand programs for Ukrainian veterans. You cannot do that if every cross-border payment raises some red flag. You need fast money that settles. You need donors who are not punished for caring. You need Bitcoin. Kozlovska is not shy about help. Quote, without American philanthropists and donors, democracy will not survive, she said. The request is simple. Support the work. Lend time and expertise. If you are a victim of this kind of repression and your lawyer told you to stay quiet, talk to them anyway. Your case may be the example that fixes the rule. And for anyone still wondering whether this is their fight, she offers a reminder from her own life. She did not know the names of the people who helped her family in Crimea. They showed up because someone asked them to. That is how networks of care actually work. Quiet hands, real money, no permission slips. We are not just victims, Kozlovska said. We are overcoming it and building the future. The future needs money you can hold, not just money you are allowed to touch. It needs Bitcoin and Bitcoin in self-custody for the moment the bank says no. It needs coders who ship privacy by default. It needs donors who refuse to be scared off by bad labels. And it needs readers who can spot the difference between safety and control. And if you want to help, you start here. And that is, by the way, the en.odfoundation.eu/how you can help. Again, en.odfoundation.eu/how you can help. Again, all the stories that I read in these for Bitcoin and the URLs will be in the show notes. So this one is from bitcoinnews.com, Open Dialogue Foundation. You'll find it. It'll be in the list. Click it, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and there is a link. Start there is a link at the very end of the article. If you click it, it will take you right to that foundation if you want to help. She said many things that I've been thinking about for a long time. A lot of this has to do with, God, I hate to say it, we're going to have to be brave. It's nothing about Bitcoin has been easy. It's not easy today. Sure, you're lucky you got all-time highs. If that's all you think Bitcoin is yet another all-time high, then you are sorely undereducated about what Bitcoin actually is. And I am sorely undereducated about what Bitcoin is. All of us are. Even people who, I'll make this argument, even people who are like at least the lifetime of Bitcoin, lifelong developers of Bitcoin, they don't even know exactly what Bitcoin is. I guarantee it. And if you get them and if you put them in front of me and we start talking, I'll bet you they admit it. Nobody knows the extent of the beast that we are either building or using or admiring. We don't know the extent of it. We only see the side that we look at. If all you look at is price action, then you are looking at only the beast head on. You don't know what the side of it looks like. You don't know how long it is, right? If you're only looking at the left side of this beast that we call Bitcoin, you don't know what the face of it is. And you don't know what the other side of it looks like. How wide is it? We know you know how long it is. You can't see its face. All you know is how long it is, but you don't know how wide it is. For that, you'd have to go back and look at the face so that you could determine how wide it is. But then you wouldn't see either one of the sides. And if you're looking at the ass end of this creature, then you're probably looking at the direction that it's going. And you probably know where it's been. And in my view, looking at the ass end of Bitcoin is probably the best vantage point to at least have a hope in hell of determining where this thing goes in the future. All the rest of it, though, is all important. Privacy. The ability to have privacy shipped by developers by default without the developers getting thrown in a goddamn hole somewhere in freaking Southeast Asia and then fed, I don't know, cobra meat all damn day. That's what needs to happen. The developers, I've been begging the developers, stop developing Bitcoin under your legal name. Stop doing that. If we're going to develop privacy by default, then two things have to happen. One, give up on the thought of being rich. Just give it up. Find wealth in other places. Big family, good food, being happy, not being anxious, not being depressed, not having an alcohol or some other weird drug habit. Find wealth somewhere else. We've been told that a shit ton of money is wealth. That's a fucking lie. That is not wealth. I can go back to the Old Testament. Yes, I use this example many times. I'm going to use it again. So yes, here it comes. It was like I think his name is Aesop. Not exactly sure. He was afraid of his brother, except Aesop got really wealthy. And he decides to send a present ahead of him because he's going to go meet his brother. And he's scared to death of his brother. He's like, oh shit, man. He's like, even though Aesop is a badass, or whatever this guy's name is, even though he's a badass and has made shit tons of money, he's terrified of his brother. So he sends a greeting present, a welcoming present, if you were, out in front of him. And the description of this welcoming present is phenomenal. In fact, I wonder if I can even find it. Hold on for a sec. Okay, I'm thinking of Jacob, not Aesop, because it's not Aesop. The name of the brother is Esau, or if that's how you pronounce it. But check this out. So Jacob is the guy who's given the gift, and he says, Jacob stayed where he was for the night. Then he selected these gifts from his possessions to present to his brother. 200 female goats, 20 male goats. 200 ewes, 20 rams. 30 female camels and their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 10 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He divided these animals into herds and assigned each to a different servant and told his servants, go ahead of me with the animals, but keep some difference or distance between the herds. That's a lot of animal. If you were to buy those animals today, you would be spending tens of thousands of dollars, if not well over $100,000, probably $200,000. This is wealth in the form of animals. The wealth is kept in the animal. Ask any rancher what their animals are worth to them. That is a form of wealth. We've been pigeonholed into thinking that only money is wealth. Only a house is wealth. Only the BMW that announces your status, and only the Rolex watch which announces your status. Only that, and gold and jewels and all that shit, and Chanel No. 5 clothes and whatever. That's wealth? No, that's a form of something that could be considered wealth depending on what your needs are at the time. What do we need right now? We need privacy. We need all the shit that's going on in the world right now to stop. And one of the ways that they have kept us leashed and caged is through what they've told us wealth is. Meanwhile, they've destroyed the family. They destroyed the extended family with the Depression, or coming out of the Depression. But extended families, even before the Depression, that was the thing. You had grandparents and parents and children. You had like 3 or 4 generations living, if not under the same roof, under roofs that were very close to each other so that each family could take care of each other, or all the members of the family could basically be a functional family unit and not be too far from each other. But now we've scattered them to the 4 winds, so you can kiss the extended family goodbye. And now it is the destruction of the nuclear family. And that's been going on since the fucking 70s, right? Divorce rates really ramped up in the late 60s to 70s and just shot the hell up through the 80s and the 90s. It's kind of leveled off now, I think, but it's the destruction of family. That's where real wealth is. That's your blood network. Getting rid of that and telling us a Rolex, that's what you need. You need to work 50 years at a job so that you can get a gold watch on your retirement. That's what was told to people in the 40s and the 50s. Well, you can kiss that shit goodbye. So apparently that wasn't real wealth, right? So now it's just a whole bunch of money in a BMW or a Lambo or some other supercar and 5 houses on the south of France. It's all bullshit. It's all crap. I think a lot about Sailor and his 5 yachts or whatever. You know what I see? A management nightmare. You say, oh, you're just jealous that he's got yachts and you don't. I would like to go on a yacht once. Maybe one of these days, one of my rich ass Bitcoin friends will invite me on their yacht. That's all I need. Oh, you're just jealous because you don't have a Lambo. Where the hell would I drive it? Hell, I need to have access to the Autobahn in Germany to actually drive that car the way it's meant to be driven. Right? It astounds me how easy it was for the people at the highest levels of society to imprison the citizenry under their own ideals that they imparted to that citizenry. Not their own ideals, the ideals that they wanted projected onto us. Robin Leach and Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, when that show came out, I didn't realize it then, but that was programming. You don't have this. This is what wealth is. Therefore, you suck. And I guarantee you that it, like in the background, it runs a program to this day to anybody that saw that show. You don't have this. That's what real wealth is. So therefore, you are a failure. So you need to keep striving to get these things so that you will be a good, upstanding member of society. And it's all a lie. It's just all a lie. And it's been that way for hundreds of years. But it's got really bad in the 70s. It doesn't matter. If we can break out of that thought process and we can start saying, what is it that I have that could be considered wealth? And let me stand upon the shoulders of that wealth to be happy, healthy, and constructive. And then that way, you stop trying to figure out how to build a piece of fucking software that you can offload for $5 billion and have everybody know exactly who you are and risk prison if, however, some of that product or whatever happened to be something somebody could use to cover their tracks. We can't do that. Bitcoiners are the only people on this planet that are able to actually understand what it means to have fun staying poor. Let's move on to the last one of the day. AI and HPC Bitcoin miners rally as AMD soars 30% on the OpenAI deal. This is James Van Straten from CoinDesk. The wave of massive contracts in the artificial intelligence and high-performance compute sector continues, with the latest coming from OpenAI, which has agreed to buy tens of billions of dollars worth of chips from Advanced Micro Devices. I guess we can kiss Intel goodbye. The deal, according to the Financial Times, could also see OpenAI acquire up to a 10% stake in AMD over time. AMD shares surged around 30%, currently changing hands at about $225 a share. And the chips purchased under this agreement will provide a total compute power capacity of 6 gigawatts. OpenAI executives estimate that 1 gigawatt of capacity costs roughly $50 billion to develop, including chips and the necessary supporting infrastructure, think electrical grid, according to the article. As a result, shares of AI and HPC-focused miners often rally on the back of such large-scale deals and infrastructure build-outs. So during Monday's U.S. Open, Bitfarms gained 8%. Iron gained 12%. Hive Digital, they gained 12%. Cypher Mining climbed 7%. CleanSpark added 5%. And TeraWulf was also up 5%. That's like most of the U.S. miners, if not all of them. Galaxy Digital has emerged as a key beneficiary of the rapid repricing of the AI and HPC infrastructure sector, having converted its Helios campus into a large-scale AI/HPC data center. In August, the company secured $1.4 billion in project financing to retrofit the facility and signed a long-term lease with CoreWeave, covering up to 800 megawatts of compute capacity. Its shares were also higher by 5% on Monday as the AMD news combined with the company's launch of Galaxy One, a new wealth management platform offering 4% yield on FDIC-insured cash and seamless auto investment into crypto and U.S. equities. Galaxy shares are now up 116% year to date. I don't know why they ended with Galaxy, because we really need to focus more on this whole deal. All of these deals are essentially incest. What do I mean? Well, okay, so OpenAI has agreed to buy tens of billions of dollars worth of chips from AMD. They also see OpenAI acquiring up to a 10% stake in AMD over time. So if you compress that time scale, then how is it OpenAI isn't buying chips from themselves? I'm just saying. And that's not the only evidence. There's like 3 or 4 different deals that have gone on over the last 2 weeks, where it's essentially a company saying that they're going to spend, let's say $50 billion to buy product of company X. But company X ends up being folded into the company that originally wanted to buy it, or that wanted to buy the stock. There's something about this, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's almost as if it's ghost money. Like, oh, well, we're going to buy these chips, but what they're really buying is AMD. That's what I think is actually going on here. Now, so they announce, well, we're going to buy all these chips from AMD, and then the newswires gets a hold of it. Dow Jones newswire gets a hold of it, and Bloomberg terminals start, puking it out, all over every trader that is sitting in front of one of those terminals, and everybody goes haywire, right? But I think what's really going on is that OpenAI is really just going to buy 10% of AMD. The chips come along for the ride. See how this works? There's really nothing here except for OpenAI wanting to buy 10% of AMD. That's all I see. In any other world, that's exactly how the news would be announced. But now we've got a stopgap maneuver. Hey, instead of actually saying what we're gonna do, let's first say what we're gonna buy these chips. And then we're going to maybe buy the company. And that sends everybody's valuation freaking screaming. And again, this is not the only deal that's been done this way. I think it's a shitty way to operate. I don't think it's above board. I do think that there is a fair amount of chicanery going on behind the scenes of all these companies. And I'm not going to call for it, but I would be very not surprised if we don't see some kind of internal collapse in AI sector and even high performance compute sector akin to the 2000 .com crash. because there was a lot of bullshit going on there too. All right. So just be aware. Everything needs to be read from many different angles. Like, again, like looking at Bitcoin. Are you looking at it in the face? Are you looking at it up the ass? Are you looking at it from the left side, from the right side? Are you on the ground being stepped on, the son of a bitch, and all you can see is up underneath it? Or are you a drone flying over the top? There are many, many ways to observe the same phenomenon or the same object. This is another one to look at. Which way are we looking at this? Are we looking at it as a chip buy, or are we looking at it as what I think it is? They want to buy 10% of AMD, but they're announcing this so that valuations go through the roof first. Again, we come back to what is wealth? What is it? Yeah, all I can think of, every time I ask that question, all I see is the dude in the scene of The Big Short. It's at the front of the movie where they're in the strip club, and homeboy is sitting there at the bar with a couple of strippers, and he's holding an open bottle of Dom Perignon champagne. And it was it Venet? I think is the last name of the character that ends up getting like the huge check at the end of the movie, saying that he was not a hero, nobody was a hero, and he's saying, I would never hang out with these guys. It's that whole scene. That entire scene, these, and I can even look at American Psycho. I can look at Margin Call, and I can look at The Big Short, and kind of take little pieces from all of it and just compile this picture of what we're supposed to think wealth is. And that's not what it is. There are other forms of wealth. It doesn't always have to be, man, I made such a big bonus that I can go hang out with strippers and whores and snort cocaine off of their ass and drink bottles of Dom Perignon. I don't think that that's wealth. In fact, I think that's a poverty. Look, I got enough money to go buy a Lambo. Poverty. Every 2 years, you got to change the timing chains on that. That costs like $50,000 or something like that. I can't remember what it is. Plus, the chances of you burning your Lamborghini to the ground before that even happens in the United States is really high, because we've got nowhere to drive a supercar whose engine is air cooled and needs air flowing over the actual heat exchanger, which means that you need to be moving fast. Why? Because it's a fast car. Our maximum, the maximum speed limit in the United States is like 85 miles an hour. And that's just in a couple of states. Idaho is one of them. It always freaks me out when I'm driving through Idaho and I can do 85 miles an hour on the interstate. I'm like going, holy shit. The supercars, like Bugattis and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all that shit, they're almost always air cooled. They need speed to be able to cool their engines off. The amount of burned out husks of Lamborghinis that I've seen in pictures on the internet, where are they always? At the gas station, because they've been cruising slowly, showing off their quote unquote wealth, and then watch it all go up in flames next to a gas pump because they were going so slow they weren't able to cool the engine down and the engine caught fire. Happens. That's what happens when you don't understand what it is that you have. And if we don't understand what we have, like some of us have family. If we're ignoring our family because we're reaching out for wealth, you don't want your family burning to the ground in front of you. Them just going away because you're fixated on money and 12 houses in the south of France and 5 Lambos and a goddamn Bugatti, and they take off, then you're the poor one, even if you can afford all that shit. Yeah. Human rights activists that we were talking about, we need privacy. And the only way that privacy is shipped with Bitcoin by default is to stop attaching the name of the developer to the development. We cannot do this shit anymore. We have every tool under the sun to be completely anonymous. And yet, somehow or another, I know Rusty Russell's name. Somehow or another, I know Nick Szabo's name. I shouldn't know any of their names. Going forward, this is how developers are going to need to operate. Somehow or another, we're going to have to figure out a way to make sure that they're fed and that they have some kind of wealth. I don't know how to do that. I wish I did. But I'm not sure if we can continue on this way, because the evidence is very clear that the forces are gathering against us, and they have armies. They have police forces. They have local police force. They have state police force. They have federal police force. They have federal armies. They have state armies. Through apathy, we have allowed it all to occur. And we may pay the ultimate price. Privacy in our financial dealings and our messaging is the only way that we can move forward. Please, for the love of God, if you're a developer, start developing completely pseudonymously. I wish I could just throw you thousands and thousands of dollars. I can't. But there it is, and I'll see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.